Recording.
I'm gonna sit in. Is that cool now? Yeah. Let's see how it. Perfect. And if I sit here, we're all groovy gravy. All right. I hate introducing people, and also I think it's better to let people introduce themselves.
Okay.
What do you think? This is the first question.
I think I'm working on the same thing. I think introductions are overrated,
I think so too.
but it's one of the quickest ways to express or create a sense of familiarity, so that there's more engagement off the bat, right?
By the way, about that mic, it picks up here.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, where are we right now?
We are at the reservoir of Chiang Mai University. Maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes northwest of Chiang Mai Old Town, and we're in the midst of Songkran, which is Thai New Year celebrations.
Northern Thai, I realized.
Thai.
Yeah. It's not like whole Thai. I think Lana, or I'm not sure why, but each part is different in Thailand, and they kind of have different dates for different, for the same festival, it seems.
Huh.
Yeah. And what do you know about the cleansing aspect of Songkran?
From my understanding, it's a time of renewal, and it's usually in accordance with nature starting to bring water to the land and exiting of dry season into the replenishing, abundant springtime feeling that everything is flourishing.
Right.
And with that, we set intentions and kind of let go of all of last year's inhibitions, guilt and shame, and really forgive and forget and express so much joy. I guess that's what I've been experiencing during Songkran this year.
Likewise, I would agree and amplify that statement, because I think I can only speak on behalf of Turkey because I'm from there, and America, I've witnessed some 4th of July celebrations there.
Yeah.
But it's the flavor is different. It's not like where it's fireworks and or just water just feels so natural and like super heat. It's really hot. You get water squirted all over you. It's this playful energy that people who don't know each other kind of get to have fun together. Which is, I only experienced this in like music festivals or stuff like this.
Yeah. It being more than one day.
Yes.
It's like a relentless positivity.
Pretty much.
It's like it's similar to that feeling where you like intended to do something good for yourself, but you're kind of resistant, and you're like, oh my god, there's another day of water. And then you get outside and everyone's laughing and already in it, and it's like, wow, like I can feel this sense of what this feeling is in the air, and everyone is radiating this renewal feeling. And like last year was my first Songkran.
Oh, this is the second one.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was in Phuket, and it was kind of more isolated. It's really intense, only in one area, but the overall feeling by the end of it, I was just like, this is actually the new year. This is the way we should feel going into a new cycle. We should feel cleansed, refreshed, revived, and so loved by everyone we witness, and vice versa. That witnesses us. It's just like this.
Yeah, not like blackout drunk.
Blackout drunk, trying to follow some like, oh, I need to lose 10 pounds by like these resolutions and these like carrying our self-doubts and judgments into the next year to be better.
I love it because this Songkran festival kind of enforces. I had this conversation with my friend Sheila, another American lady. We established that having New Year themes is much better than having New Year's resolutions, like specific goals. It's like, okay, this year I'm going to move more. So whatever you do in that day or that month, oh, like I started a step lesson, or I bought myself a bicycle and I take it out every weekend. That's good. That's good. Like the theme is moving this year. Okay, good. Like anything that you move, it's a, tick on the positive side of, that movement part, which I think is a better way for us humans, because we're not machines at the end of the day.
Yeah. How do we get the most out of our curiosity? Like, how do we direct our attention instead of saying, I'm going to learn this language or I'm going to learn this amount of information? It's like, how can I just allow myself to naturally go into that state where I do, but from a place of like, oh, I'm going to go read a new book, or I'm going to go check out the library, or something that would give us access to the same experience, but in a much more supportive way, rather than a expectation or a forceful way that kind of causes this like response of failure. It's like, well, I didn't end up doing what I said,
Yeah, and it's easier to fall into the, oh no, like I threw up a 0, another 0, another 0.
And then stop trusting ourselves to just explore that, like, oh, I just wanted to do movement. I didn't have to particularly go to a class every day.
And who are you?
My name is Zachary. I'm from the United States originally. I'm I don't know how to phrase it. I'm a native world traveler.
Hey.
So I literally incarnated to get to know the whole world this round, not by country, but by the universality of human. And I came into this life wanting to see people as they are, wanting to see humans for all their worth and for all their everything, and to reach a state of, I guess, like a kinship and acceptance that no matter how different we are, we're so similar, and we can accept each other for our differences because we're miraculous beings.
Preach.
Yeah. That's kind of, even Songkran is reminding me of all this stuff I just said. But like, Fatih and I met because we're of the same vibe. Like this curious traveler that's so enthusiastic about exchanging a true, like, authentic or novel experience with another human, and really growing and learning from that. That's kind of what I'm into right now.
I love it. I'm into what you're into, and I think that's a great way to describe yourself and others. The frequency, I think, is super important. Also, trusting your gut feeling when you're traveling and when you're with people. Sort of, okay, what does your heart say? What does your gut say? What does your mind say? If one of these say no, then it's probably not the best match for you. If it's a venue, if it's a person, if it's whatever. I think to be really attuned with your body when you're traveling, especially if it's, for me, Thailand is kind of easier to travel. I can just leave my shit around, expensive shit, and no one's gonna take it or anything.
The camera that's recording me right now, this one, I left at a restaurant last night at the end of the night.
Oh shit, really?
And on the chair, and they just tucked the bag away. They didn't even see what was in the bag. They didn't check the bag or anything. But
wow, that's crazy.
I left a $2,000 camera at a restaurant, and it was there this morning.
Oh my god, that's so silly because I didn't hit record.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
No worries.
Yeah, I think you got it though, right?
I did.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just to recap, where are we?
We are in Chiang Mai, in the midst of Songkran, and behind us is the reservoir of Chiang Mai University, a beautiful, relaxing, quiet nature area.
Lush.
I
love that word. Also, who are you?
My name is Zachary, and I'm a world traveler, and on a mission to be human, see human, love human, and embrace aliveness.
Amen. Yeah, Zach and I met maybe a couple months ago. I arrived in Chiang Mai in Loi Krathong. That was the other big festival.
Yeah.
And it perfectly aligned with my birthday, so it was like, for me, oh, you shouldn't have everyone's like with the lanterns and stuff, you know? I'm like, oh man, look at that. Like, that's a good welcoming party for me.
Serious. It's that having your own personal, annual transition of your birthday, and then being able to see the light in the sky. Lantern Festival is a whole nother wonderful thing up in Chiang Mai.
Yeah, there's no shortage of feeling festive in Thailand, wherever you are. It doesn't really matter. Oh, like I want to be in Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Phuket, whatever. Like wherever you are, you're gonna feel festive in few times of the year, actually.
Yeah, it's still rich no matter where you are. A little effort on your side to connect with the neighborhood or local people, and you'll feel this the depth of how they celebrate together and the tradition. It's really cool.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your travel journey. I know it personally, but I would like to hear it on tape.
Yeah, there's a lot of different versions of it. Where should I start, or from what angle do you think is most?
So if you could just location wise, maybe we could just like take us around the world with you.
I'll sum up. I was born in Cali, and I was raised on military bases. My father was a Department of Defense school teacher, so basically he taught roughly like 3rd grade for K through 12 U.S. education overseas on military bases. So I've lived in Panama, Germany, Japan, Okinawa, Arizona, and even Cuba. We were supposed to live there. There was a base there before the whole Guantanamo Bay and all that. Like in the 90s, there was a base and there was families there, and they were going to set up a U.S. base and have schools. And
I see. So U.S.-based schools are for the military personnel's children?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So any base big enough to have military personnel beyond soldiers, they'll move the whole family. Like Okinawa, the Air Force base there is roughly 30,000 Americans. My graduating class had about 300 students. So, I mean, you can kind of average. It's not the whole base, but yeah, there's a decent amount of Americans kind of scattered around the world in this little socialist construct of the military. It's pretty interesting.
It is.
But that's how I grew up, and I'm really familiar with different cultures and being abroad as a norm. So post-college, I feel like there was just an itch I couldn't even begin to scratch.
You did college in America, right?
Yeah, so I went to university in Colorado. I was educated in filmmaking, and towards the end of college, I would say I started having my own personal spiritual awakening, and just a deep urge to explore the world and simultaneously kind of go deeper into what I perceive to be my spiritual process. So I guess the first trip was New Zealand, and that was just like a short trip with friends the year after college.
I see.
And then even that was pretty adventurous. We hitchhiked, and there's a lot of tangent long stories in New Zealand that kind of coincide with this deeper journey, even though it was just first travel stint after being, graduated or whatever. And then the following year, I went to India for my first time, and got a teacher did a 30-day intensive teacher training, and kind of explored
I TOEFL, or is not TOEFL?
Oh, ITTC.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just like I think it's 200-hour TTC.
Okay.
So it's like the average Hatha yoga.
Oh no, you're not doing English language teaching.
You're
breaking the
yoga
chain.
teacher training.
Teacher training.
Yeah,
okay,
in India.
Got you.
And this is like 2011, 2012.
Okay, the end of the beginning.
The end of the beginning, yeah. And I was pretty into that whole thing too. And in hindsight, I feel like 2012, if you know Terrence McKenna at all, or any of these kooks that kind of were like tracking this expression of novelty and tension,
Right.
I definitely feel like something clicked in 2012, and something did end. But it's like,
Was it the Sankalpas, or it was more Mayan calendar, right? Like how they got to the this is the end of the world conclusion.
that I think what was advertised, or what like became the trend, was the Mayan calendar stuff. 2012 Mayan calendar, it's the end of Mayan calendar.
Right.
And then, but like this whole phase, if you go from a yogic perspective, there's a lot of, I guess not debate, but like speculation as to whether or not like this is a time of Kali Yuga. I don't know if we're like in the midst of it. Some would say we're at the end of it. Some would say we're in the fucking shit of the shit. Like this is the darkest time, where like it's the hardest time to perceive truth or represent it or express it in a way that it's like shared universally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
For us, or for people watching at the comfort of their houses with no problem whatsoever, it might be like, the fuck are these guys talking about? But I mean, if you just go to Middle East, or any other place where there's a lot of suffering, you'll see how dark it is actually.
Yeah, and I mean, if you do a little research, there's been a lot of biblical metaphors, different bodies of water that were dry starting to flow, or vice versa. There's a lot of like, these are biblical times, and they were written about. It's not something to speculate as much as find your own place in your beliefs and see what guides you forward. But it's not a time to just sit back and be comfortable and just assume that life is going to stay the way it is. And yeah, I think there's a lot of cycles playing out. We don't have to know all of them or be overwhelmed by the conspiracies of such, but like, we're living in a cyclical experience, and there was like the people before us tracked this and delivered some kind of information for us to proceed with. So yeah, I think it's hard to find a balanced perspective, because the world is pretty chaotic when you start acknowledging all the things going on. But it's beneficial to assume that we don't know everything.
That is huge. Whenever some student or some person that I interact with says I don't know, I'm just like, wow, like, thank you. Thank you for saying it, because it's the best answer. It's an answer that keeps you learning. Like, you just keep open to any input that comes in. I want to ask you about home. How does it feel to, at this point, from with your parents, like traveling different parts of the world, and remind me, you did college in America, but did you do any other schooling in other parts of the world?
All my grade schooling was pretty much every 4 years. From when I came to kindergarten, I started grade school in Japan. And every 4 years I would be at a new base, a new school, a new set of friends, and almost everyone in the environment was in a similar experience. So you get used to something, but like, even if I stayed in a place for 4 years, I would see my group of friends change rapidly. Right? So yeah, I think the sense of home and relationships are two things that I've really had to analyze, because I don't have the same value in person-to-person relationships. Something in my subconscious registers them as temporary, but I don't take it personally either. I really enjoy people, and in some ways I don't feel like I don't hurt saying goodbye. I don't really miss people as much as we would assume that we're supposed to sometimes, because the world is small and there's so many people to love. I don't know if we have to put precedent on one particular person or a group of people to say these are my people. When we have the opportunity to find that feeling of home, really, like, this isn't some kind of metaphor, it's like something I had to dig for. It's like people who accept me as I am allow me to be home. And yeah, a lot of Thailand is kind of showing me how deep it can get, how quick you can really kind of surrender or just give up that resistance of feeling uncomfortable in a foreign place and just choose to be home, somewhere inside. And then people around you start to kind of reflect that steadiness that's like people would think about being in their hometown with, right? Which, yeah, in essence, I don't have a hometown. So what I just expressed is kind of a result of not having the traditional foundation of something to return to, or this nostalgic idea of a memory that's like permanent.
I see. So your life sort of was set up so that you realize this, almost.
It feels that way. That's kind of why I'm joking. I'm like, I incarnated to literally live on Earth, like be an Earth traveler and get to know, or actually just, I don't know, move about in a way that everyone that I witness or exchange energy with understands that I'm here for that.
Yeah.
Like I'm a brother and a cousin to everyone, so to speak, and I love that familiarity.
Yeah. I once heard, I asked someone a question like, what does home mean to you after traveling so much? And they said, home's a journey.
Yeah, I would say thematically, that whole journey destination thing. So you're not really going anywhere. You're always going somewhere, and that is the destination. And the more I like churn my attention and love into like the perceived struggle of not arriving, right? It's like, well, if you're going there, you're not there yet, and therefore you haven't arrived.
Yes.
But if you're constantly in a state of understanding that that's home, the journey is home, then that feeling of being settled becomes this experience rather than like a finite place.
I got that on second or third or fourth acid trip. I don't remember. We took some LSD with my friend, and we went to the Prince's Islands, which is a really popular place in the summer for Turkish, Istanbul people.
Princes or princess?
Princes, like
Prince's Island.
because there's a couple of them.
Cool.
It used to be a prison in the Byzantine time. If there's a writer, mystic, some person that's kind of a troublemaker in society, they would just like put them into the boat and just send them off to these islands. Now it's kind of like a summer house kind of situation for a lot of these people. But the whole journey destination thing clicked in me. I think it was like I was 19. It has to be 19. And we just geared up, like we took the stuff on the boat, and it's like a 40-minute boat ride to the island. So once we got to the island, we were actually in it, and we were like, okay, like we need to find the best spot to like settle. And it's a huge island. If you walk, it's kind of like a 2.5 hour walk. And with all the gear that we had, like sandwiches and like toys and like all sorts of crazy things, it's heavy to like just be hauling that shit around,
sure. Yeah.
And we were like, okay, like, is this the best place? Is this the best place? Is this the best place? And like 3-4 hours had gone by, and we were just like doing laps around the island. And like once we got to the place where we started, we were like, oh wait, like that was the whole, like that was the best place. Like walking around was the best place, and that was the click. And ever since then, I think I internalized that idea of, okay, I'm in the process of arriving, and that will never change. Like the journeying, like my mind kind of switched over from all these like past tenses or future tenses to just like continuous. Like that's life is continuous for me. And I want to tie it from here to your if I had to introduce you, I would probably say like your Zach is a fellow psychonaut.
So he likes to look at consciousness and experience and reality through different lenses. And one that we talked about extensively was ayahuasca. And I'm actually curious about this. And you have like a wide range of experience here. So I want to hear about your first time, how you were introduced to it, and what sort of secrets have revealed themselves to you.
Okay. My first time trying ayahuasca was in Colorado, 2010, senior year in college, and it was like November. It's cold out. There's snow up. It was like in this small town kind of outside of Boulder, Colorado, in like a Maloka, so like a logged mound, ceremonial space. And I guess precursor to that, it was an obsession. Like the first time I heard of DMT, and I had already done mushrooms and LSD, maybe 3 or 4 years on and off throughout college, experimenting and recreationally. But it did catalyze this interest in yoga and meditation, and I was always loved drawing and abstract art. And then I discovered Alex Gray.
The guy who made an album cover for Tool.
Yeah, this guy, Cosm, COSM. He has this whole estate in New York where he's like put his whole life into the spiritual evolution through art. And his whole movement is amazing, and him as a being or an artist catalyzed so much of my curiosity into exploration through doing art and through doing DMT. And the first time I tried DMT was I think a year previous to trying ayahuasca. And in short, it was a very short trip, and I'll compress it because I'm telling a long story here, I guess. But it was like the whole thing, your life flashes before your eyes. You go through this tunnel of energy and light where you feel the warmth of existence kind of cascading through your veins in a way that is everything all at once. And I would say this is like when people say their life flashes before their eyes, you get a glimpse or just a taste of everything you've ever done, good and bad.
Up until that point, or does it include the future as well? I mean, obviously you don't remember it, but how did it feel like?
It felt like an assessment to presence. So like everything up to that point, I didn't see much, especially with that first one. I didn't see projections of the future. But it kind of just, it's like a defragmentation to the karma of our mind.
Gotcha.
So it helps us reorganize where we store our attention, our guilt, our shame, and kind of like, it's like a rapid fire forgiveness tool. Doesn't do everything, but it really allows for a completely different lens on reality, like you said. And that first experience, I don't know what it was, but I was just, it felt like an angel hug as I came back into my body, and everything, I was just ringing with this assurance that everything was okay, and that I was doing my best, I was in the right place, and everything just felt cozily yes.
And before, like going into it, did you also have a positive mindset, or were you in this time of a period of your life where it was like, I don't know what to do?
I would say it was, I had just finished finals. I usually, in college, I would usually do psychedelics at the end of a big bender of work, right? So your brain is like finished with all the data, and it's like ready to check out or just reset. And that's when I would find the best reaction to psychedelics is usually when all the hard work is done, right? So to speak. But this was, I had some sense of curiosity that was borderline desperation for answers, but at the same time, I feel like in my astronaut, in my psychonaut journeys, the propulsion is just kind of this anthropological curiosity of like, well, let's go into the next session, like just more of like, well, I'm curious enough, and this is what I want to experience.
Right.
And like.
By the way, this is by no means any recommendation or advice for using illegal and illicit substances. They're illegal and bad for you. Do it with caution. But yeah, so having those experiences, so I wanted to ask you this: how much of it in life, things that happen to us or things we choose to do, happen for a reason for you, and how much of it do you think we're just reading into them? And do you think doing psychedelics or psychoactive substances increase the likelihood of you thinking that everything's for a reason / not?
Yeah, I think at this point, as like a statement of that, there's too many times to count. I feel like I've cathartically like drowned and convulged throughout the last 15 years in these moments that are like undeniably all part of one movie, and I'm not like fully aware of the meanings, but I don't think we have the capacity to understand our whole story, and that may not be the point, but to trust that everything is happening with reason. Otherwise it wouldn't be happening. And I think there's a lot of debates from different lenses we could take that kind of signify a more science-based approach or a spiritual-based approach. But when we get out of the analytics of our mind and stop separating and categorizing into these different groups of thought, and we have conversations as humans without so much reference to the data we've collected, I think there's something that is quite accepting of the mystery we call life in a way that provides some sense of assurance that isn't analytical. So it's like, I would assume, even the most skeptical people, somewhere in their being, have a sense of trust towards this unknown. I call it energy, but let's just call it an unknown, and they trust it, right? It's not clear, it's not a known thing, and it draws us forward into our life, and it hopefully catalyzes or supports actions that would continue into living a good life with some sense of trust and not all this kind of knowing about what's going to come.
Yeah, I think we could totally say energy even for skeptics or science-based people, because if you look at the core of it, it's just atoms, and they are basically vibrations, and whatever's vibrating gives off energy, and in that sense everything is energy. And I was also going to expound on my mother, who has no relation to any of these substances we talk about. She's not well versed in the topics that we sort of are, like Eastern philosophy and different ways of perceiving reality and all that. She doesn't really know of them even. And she described her dream to me once. She was like, oh, you know what, like I had this dream and it felt like my life as a whole, like up until this point, was a dream already, and it was encapsulated in this small little droplet of water, and that droplet of water in my dream went back into the ocean, and it was just like this like feeling of peace and tranquility and like the deep sleep. It's like that amazing. And then I woke up, like it's just I was getting used to this feeling of like getting being a part of the whole, like you were describing. I think once you break through this veil of perceiving reality, I think you kind of realize that you're the whole process, basically, with all the stars and all the grass and all the sand and all the water. you're one with, like, that is the process that's the happening.
Yeah.
And that's overwhelmingly real.
And your mom was experiencing that through her dreams.
Just dreaming.
Yeah. I think, and that's, I don't recommend taking drugs, psychedelics, or any of this, especially in hindsight. It's like, with the living example that we're dreamers, and like some of the softest experiences can take us into the same realms as these sometimes abrasive substances or tools that kind of serve as like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
But like, our dreams sometimes are the same thing, but maybe they're a elevator or a escalator to a different realm for a shorter amount of time. But we're always getting what we need, and we're always learning what we are intending to, even unconsciously. So it's like, whether or not we seek these direct experiences to teach us about what we think we're looking for next, or we accept this mystery and really just kind of artify our life, like allow our dreams to show us the poems that we're hearing and seeing, and kind of allow our lens to soften and show us that it's already here, and that all these efforts we're making to arrive at a destination are simply these like perceived shortcuts we think we can take because the patience that I needed wasn't there. Right? I was so hungry and kind of desperate, but I didn't have the amount of dedication and patience to kind of just sit it out, and that's where I think these things are a great vehicle for evolving or like seeing more or getting to where you feel like you want to be, but you always have to pay the toll road if you want to go a little faster, and that is a different integration process for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At that point, I think the shamans in the past, I mean, when we say shamans, people might have this idea of understanding it something like, oh, the sorcerer, magic, and it is that a little bit, but it's nothing outside of nature. At the crux of it, it's like they're just like taking different components of nature, because they listen, they know, and these people were considered doctors. They were considered peacemakers. You know, if there's like a dispute between two people, they would just go to this shaman, and he would kind of settle, or she would settle the disagreement. But at that point, it's kind of a doctor-patient relationship where every illness requires a different ailment, and every ailment has a different effect on different people. So your experience is going to be vastly different than mine, and my experience is going to be vastly different than yours. So this is why I don't take anyone's advice. But yeah, if a lot of institutions in the States and Europe use these psychedelics, and like treating PTSD with MDMA. So it's not advised to self-prescribe these things, but it's healthy to keep an open mind to this, because if you feel stuck, if you're just doing the same thing over and over again for 20 years and you're in the basement, you're working that 9 to 5 that you hate, I mean, like, there's different ways of living life. You don't have to do the same thing over and over again.
And I think that's the point. It's like, it's not a material thing or like a one thing. There's not a one thing answer. Like, I think our human need for resolution or solution idealizes this blue pill or this like quick answer, like this thing that'll just fix everything. And in the majority of the people, like,
it just kickstarts the process.
And exactly. But it's like there is no blue pill, even though we all think somewhere unconsciously we're still hoping for this solution outside of ourselves. Like, that still seems very evident with humanity, that a lot of us, whether we're propagating that belief and trained to kind of take pills over bettering ourselves, but this kind of transitions into like, what's the point of all of this, right? And it's like, we want a better life and we don't want to feel stuck. and these things help us not stagnate within this matrix, or like within dogma, basically the repetition of ideas, beliefs, and actions that are no longer serving consciousness, right? So we start doing things without thinking, and we start degrading our lives because it's the way it used to be, and that's the way it was done, without bringing conscious change to it. And these tools are from nature and they help. But it was funny because I think I read, or someone, conversations and articles kind of all, but breath work. There was like a small study done on breath work versus ayahuasca ceremonies. One ayahuasca ceremony, which lasts about 4 hours, one intense breathwork session, which was about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And the long-term effects over the course of a month. And the breath was actually more effective in certain ways they're measuring, with just like everyday well-being as a feeling. Certain things with like taking action towards goals, and maybe like I don't know how well these things were measured, but in essence we have the tools we need in us to move forward in the way that we want. And I think it's taken this long, like this whole gen from baby boomers to start opening this can of worms and really like saying like, whoa, what are these substances from the rainforest from Africa, you know, what's ibogaine? It's like there's a lot of application for this stuff, you know. We have created some of the worst PTSD for ourselves, and we're seeing that there's like a viable options for soldiers to actually move through, you know, real shit that they experience in their lives, and come into this place where they're no longer like you know, not an expat, an ex-military person with PTSD in their parents' basement wondering how to live a life, you know. But I think it's for me, it's in terms of purpose and curiosity around all of this, how do I share catalyst or transformational actualness in the most accessible way possible, you know.
Breath work is huge. I'll squeeze this in. I was just thinking and pontificating about life and how, you know, breath is kind of essential to life, and it's involuntary and voluntary at the same time. That's why a lot of people, well, like a lot of schools of meditation, schools of mindfulness, and Eastern philosophies make you focus on the breath, because you can bring your attention back. And when I was thinking, this kind of revealed itself to me. Breath is kind of like a binary, almost like you can communicate with your body. It's kind of like a 1 and a 0, you know, like if you change the cadences, if you change the way like the frequencies and stuff, like you can target different parts of your mind, different parts of your body, different parts of your, like you can warm your body up, you know, like you can
change your heartbeat, your blood pressure.
It's like binary code basically. And if you master your breath, you can master your life, your body essentially. And if you master your body, you can master your mind, and so on and so forth. I don't know, I thought it was, I might write an article about it or do a Tuesday video about it. I don't know.
That's I would say that's a pillar of yoga, and it's the principle of pranayam, just prana, energy, ayam is to breathe essentially. So to like breath, energize breath, and it's pranayam is getting out of the postures of yoga into the physical expression of patterns within like within different parts of your body, but within different techniques of breathing, and it's kind of infinite. Like there's basics that lead to very intricate and ultra specific nuanced things that from a basic standpoint don't look different or don't even are kind of imperceivable, but you can alter so much of the biological responses in your body through your breath. And I don't think there's any health changes or mood changes or thought changes without, like, you can clearly see a change in the breath every time one of those three things is occurring. So it's almost like the code before the thought, and it is the true 1 and 0.
Yeah.
And like, we don't know how to speak breath, but if we could drop in the right code through the 1s and 0s of like every rhythm would inlay a program. Essentially, we would build out something within the structure through that inlay of breath. And that's, again, it just kind of circles back to pranayama being, from a yogic lens, being that the access to what we just said. And yeah, I've I don't know how many hours I put into pranayama through teacher training and stuff, but what we're speaking of is actual, like, X amount of repetitions of this style exercise will have this effect on your body.
It's like building muscle.
Yeah, but it almost seems more challenging because it's something that, like, is hard to feel for a while.
And also to track the progress, I suppose. Like you can
Exactly
see the gains, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
there's no measure,
Yeah.
and there's no like feedback to the ego that says you're making accomplishment or that this is valuable.
or people are realizing.
Yeah.
Switching gears a bit, tell me about your recent accident and how it made you realize a couple things and stuff.
Okay.
I'm with you.
I think traveling is can feel like a double-edged. How do I phrase that? Like, traveling has two sides, and you're either like, sometimes it's simultaneous, but you're exploring and kind of seeking or like discovering, and you're on this side of like just kind of being a traveler and curious and genuine and walking that path. And then I think the other side of traveling is more in, like, leans towards escapism and not keeping up with ourselves and kind of using the novelty of newness to reduce the friction of familiarity. Because when we stop moving, that's when our life and our problems that were in our environment start to magnetize again and show us where we're actually at in our mind and our actions. If we're constantly on the road, it's a little easier to ignore certain patterns about ourselves because they don't creep up or they don't cause the same reactions in a moving environment as opposed to a stable one where everyone is more regular in your life. So I got in an accident in Laos this year, 2024, and I had been abroad already a year, and I had been driving a motorbike for a year with minimal problems. And in hindsight, like, I broke my leg, both the bones in my right leg.
Still pretty swollen.
Yeah, it's still pretty effed up. I'm walking like a injured person.
You did the bicycle thing and it felt comfortable, right?
Yeah, I can ride a bicycle.
Right, there we go.
I can ride my bicycle with handlebar. Reference to whatever. Yeah, it's been a very humbling experience, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But it's also been this really, like, it's allowed me to accept that maybe I need more help than I thought, and that's absolutely okay. Like, there's no, I think in the idea of that men have, I guess, in being strong and being men, that, like, whatever we can handle on our own, we should. And no one really checks in with us. I think that's part of the shittiest part of being a man, is like, there is this toughness that goes unquestioned. And yeah, to be vulnerable and to really say, like, I can't do this, or I need help, or like, yeah, just to admit where we're actually at fully, I think is has been one of the biggest kind of outcomes or results of this accident, is just to kind of like move a lot slower and not expect less out of myself, but to be more realistic and to actually listen to myself more instead of just dragging myself along in a way that was a little bit ignorant or a little bit rough or edgy. Yeah, because it's the way we treat ourselves is the way we treat everyone else, you know.
Oh,
and
that's powerful.
and no one really knows how we treat ourselves all the time. You know, when we're frustrated or we're scared or we're not feeling well or feeling ourselves, a lot of these moments don't get expressed or get seen by anyone else, and I know we share all of them, you know. So it's just a lot of humility and a lot of like realizing that it's like vulnerability and transparency are probably the most powerful things that we can share, but that's why they're so hard to share, because they're so powerful. And the feeling of vulnerability sometimes is so uncomfortable because there's nothing behind it. There's nothing to hide behind. And yeah, going off on a different tangent there.
I think when you said about, masculinity and how, it's important to be a man and all that, and it's true, no one really checks in on us. And I think we have a very skewed idea of femininity and masculinity in the modern day and age right now.
Totally.
It's on purpose. I don't think it's just random that people are thinking about, the feminism and, all this like toxic masculinism. Like all these like phrases that are being thrown around aren't random. I think they're a part of a bigger sort of memology that
Memology.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it's just, I've studied literature and I was into books, and I continue to educate myself through understanding how word structures and paragraphs and images these days can influence the behavior of people. I think these phones and laptops are governing the way we behave to a certain extent, however much you allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, going back to masculinity, the best definition I found so far was being truly masculine is to wait until the whole village has eaten. So you eat last, or if there's like an evacuation situation, the man is supposed to be the last who leaves. And this only happens if the dude is truly honest about his capability,
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, like I can't do that, or right, just being honest and true will help to save that village, because it's about like it's about the others. Like true masculinity is about caring for others,
Yeah.
not yourself. And in that sense, vulnerability comes into like an important role, I think. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's to put up this mask of like, okay, like I'm strong, I'm capable, able. That's good, but if your strength, when it breaks down, or when it's not enough, or when you're by yourself, if it's like tormenting you, or if you're taking it out on someone like your mom or your parent or your significant other, or where's the power in that? Like it needs to be acknowledged that there's hard times and there's easy times, and there's times to be sad and times to be vulnerable and times to be powerful. But if it's all balanced, I think it's a healthier way to be.
Yeah, I feel like I've been theorizing a lot on this, like the rites of passage, and a young person becoming an adult, whether women or man, through a passage of something physically demanding and kind of life-threatening, traditionally a lot of the times it's just this very humbling thing that leads to or shows a young person what they're capable of, but also the humbling aspects of pain through some kind of trial usually. But it's like I guess from I don't know if it's American, but from like a modern perspective of what is strength, I think I adapted to the idea of that, and like I always perceive myself as kind of scrawny, like pretty skinny my whole life, athletic, but like I never was like the best at anything physically. I always felt like I was kind of just mediocre, and that even on that level I was like keeping up. Like I learned to keep up with like stronger people a little bit by acting strong and knowing how to appear tough, right? But it didn't make me any stronger. Like knowing how to appear strong and tough doesn't make us stronger. It just causes us to deny how weak we feel. And that's kind of what occurred later on in life. It's like I realized I spent most of my teenage years like on some ego trip, like most of us, just in our little bubble of our who we think we are as teenagers, these crazy people, and just feeling like I had spent most of my time projecting an idea of confidence and coolness and like this like dude or this guy that appeared this way. But inside, I was like this growing feeling of imposter insecurity, feeling actually weak, like physically weak in my own body and insubstantial was the actual honest feeling that I was carrying all those years. And this idea or this personality that I had developed that can appear like a little suave and charming and cool is actually a response out of feeling insufficient, and that was really disorienting, because it's like you do lose your self-esteem when you start to assess who you really are and how you really feel about yourself. It's not like a comfortable transition from fake to real. There's a lot of disorienting spaces of allowing our beliefs and our ideas to become new, I guess. And I wouldn't say it's the self-development doesn't feel that good a lot of the time.
True that.
I don't know why everyone's so into this stuff, like ice bath your face, like what that.
Yes, self-development is painful. I mean, it's supposed to be too, because it's like picking out the impurities and it's like sharpening. Okay, let's create a foil for Zach here. Just imagine a guy all muscle, all freaking juice head, but like zero intellect. And for him to admit that he's for the lack of a better term, a dumb fuck, like it's painful for him, like to go through like, I need to educate myself, I need to learn a few skills if I want to be employable, and not like, just do like a bouncer.
I went to the gym because I thought I wasn't smart, so I don't read books because my muscles are better for me. And that's something I brought upon myself, right? Yeah. Well,
exactly. I think a balance needs to be struck in every single human being, where their mental facilities kind of have to match their physical capabilities, because healthy mind, healthy body, it kind of goes hand in hand. Because if you take the necessary steps to have a stronger frame, stronger body, it definitely spills over to your mind as well. Like you reinforce whatever you have in your mind as a strength, and vice versa as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So another question, speaking of all of the self-development and different resources that people can tap into for developing themselves, can you talk about how in this landscape of fake gurus and charlatans, which people do we trust and who do we look for guidance?
Yeah, I think one of the strong themes is like the inside outside journey, and like, you know, that, yeah, the whole search for self-development, these quick fixes, biohacking, to gurus, to AI, like wanting this external force to just solve all the problems that we can't seem to grasp or comprehend ourselves. And I think, like, I've had a lot of different teachers. I wouldn't say I've ever been in like a cult, but I definitely had like a guru in the traditional sense for like 3 years. And I went to India and took diksha, or went full into the process of being a renunciate in this lineage, and studying yoga and doing meditation and going to these retreats of like silent meditation for like 14 days. And in the end there was like a sex scandal that kind of dissolved this sangha. And but I have no regrets, because my journey into that group of people was a patient one, watching the people. So it's like, how can we tell if a person is truly enlightened, or if they are gonna like basically be a charlatan and take our money and leave us with this feeling of confusion again, and traumatized or whatever, which is often the case. You can watch a lot of documentaries about this throughout the ages, throughout the
wild country, baby.
wild country. Osho was a fucking rock star. Like, that guy, man,
Rolls Royce
for days. But like, was he a charlatan? I don't know. I didn't know the guy. I wasn't in his sangha. I barely like was a part of that time period. Like, I've talked to people who lived in his community. They're some of the coolest people ever. Again, I don't know how much that relates to Osho, but the people I've talked to that grew up or lived in that environment as individuals are pretty interesting, and seem to benefit overall. And I think the only way to really track any information you're getting from anything, from anyone or any source, is application and intuition. So like, you can taste if something is sweet or bitter by constantly taking a little bit in, right? And it's like, apply the lessons you're learning to your life. Is your life getting better? What is better? Are your relationships more harmonious? Do you wake up feeling a sense of gratitude and satisfaction, or just a lack of fear, right? Is your life getting better, slowly but surely, consistently, on a day-to-day basis, based on what you're putting in from these other sources of information? That's pretty much it. We don't have to go all the way to idolizing things outside of us. The devotion that causes us to transform isn't because an individual is enlightened. It's because we want transformation to occur. And the more we invest that attention in the process, the more we will change. There's nothing outside of ourselves that is going to change us more than that agreement that I just spoke of internally. And so I think these teachers, they all offer a different lens of viewing ourselves and our relationship with reality, and we all have a particular angle in which seeing from would be super powerful, right? So when we align with a teacher, sometimes we do level up quicker, but we're the ones leveling up because we wanted to. You're the one playing the game. You know, it's like you're playing a video game and you go to this teacher in the video game. You're the one who has to carry out the lesson. So again, like, no one is doing anything for us. We're showing up in the places that we need to to take the information from a source and take action. And that's where I think a lot of us, including myself, constantly reminded that, like, it doesn't matter who's in front of us. If we're not taking the right action for ourselves, that's our responsibility, and there's no one to blame for brainwashing us. You know, we wanted someone to tell us what to do.
Word.
Yeah.
Word for word. I think it's in the same way that, you know, some negative people look at you and say, oh, like, you're so impatient, oh, like, just you're so stupid. It's like, well, it takes one to know one.
Yeah.
So, like, whatever you have inside, you see a reflection of outside. So in that same sense, if you're looking for answers, and if you're, you know, not willing to go the high road or take the, like, pay the toll, as it were, and you're just going to some people for quick fixes and stuff, it's like whatever intention you have, you will meet. That intention will come towards your face, like, really fast. And at that point, it's on you to own it up and say, okay, like, I chose this, like, this was my intention. Because, I mean, I said this to, like, most of the people I've met in my life. I feel like everyone has a moral compass in them. That's pretty fucking accurate, you know? And if you say it's not, it's just, I mean, you're just lying. Like, you already know if what you're doing is good or what you're doing is bad. Like, almost all of the time. So just follow that compass, really, and just be true to yourself. And that's the painful part of the development. Just being, like, brutally honest about yourself. Yes, I've neglected my body for a long time. Yes, I've neglected my intellect for a long time. Yes, I've neglected all relationships in my life, and that's I've been writing a lot these past few days about the relationships I've had in my life are a reflection of how I felt throughout the time, and, like, what my psyche is going through. And I totally subscribe to this, you're the average of the 5 people around you thing. So in that sense, yeah, it's all on you.
Yeah. I mean, and who are you if you don't hang out with anyone?
Oh.
I thought about that.
Think about it. So then, can you tell us a few crazy stories from all the travel that you had? If I could be a little bit more specific, maybe just tell us about a few crazy personalities that you've met.
Along the way.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, you could edit this in. I felt like I wanted to say more about ayahuasca, or just have, like, another kind of encompassing of a small summary. But I would, a lot of characters I've met are spiritually inclined, and I would call some of them wizards, like shamans, healers, musicians, muses, artists,
white magicians.
Yeah, and some witches, you know, and some people who don't know is some people who didn't even know that they were as powerful as they were, or that they were even as magical as they were.
Black magic fuckery.
Like, I think it goes both ways, though. It's like radiance, for instance. Like, beauty is magical, and, like, in certain ways where you share subtle nuances of beauty. I think this is why I appreciate femininity. It's just like when you watch a this is getting very specific, but it's like you watch a beautiful lady, like, appreciating nature, like someone walking, and they take a moment, and you see them as a beautiful person, but they're seeing and witnessing all the beauty around them, and they're like a part of this huge painting, and it all breathes this even deeper effulgence of, like, a flower blooming, this character within the whole that appreciates the whole, like beauty seeing beauty.
It's like watching a reaction video on YouTube for the people who are...
and that's just it. But it's like we don't even realize how magnificent our attention is. Like it kind of goes into the children, and like when they're in a state of wonder, that's when they're like you could stare at a child who's staring at things for a while because their eyes, their curiosity is so powerful, so untamed and so raw. And I would say that's what really makes a character, is that maybe the parts of them that they don't see that everyone does.
Yes.
And makes them so peculiar, because it's like, oh, I didn't even think about myself that way, but that's why everyone appreciates them. Traveling, these characters, who pops into my mind?
Yeah, it's the first few ought to do.
One of these guys, a young Indian engineering student.
Wow, an Indian engineer?
We were, super classic, but just he's a bit younger than me. We were in Rishikesh, and we were trying to score some hash, and we started talking about psychedelics, and just kind of like really buzzing off similar stuff. And the way I laid out certain thoughts, he just had these ahas, like whoa, dude. And I felt kind of like not proud, but I was like I'm like giving this guy things to chew on, you know? Like, I'm like, wow, this guy appreciates the way I'm perceiving reality, you know? And then cut to a year from then, and he sits in his first 10-day silent retreat, Vipassana, which is like Vipassana, 10 days silent Buddhist-based retreat that's internationally recognized and available to anyone. Check it out.
By the way, it's not... So Vipassana is like a part of like a tripod almost. So that's kind of the sit down and silence part of the meditation. You also need an active one and another one that I forgot. I'll fish it out and like add it. But
Sila, Samadhi, and what? Panya.
Yeah.
Sila, Panya, and Samadhi.
Just for context, like meditation isn't about like you also need to fucking move, be meditative in that. I realized this when I was like training my body, and I'm team Zach when it comes to just, you know, physical exercises and stuff. Same, athletic, average, not the best. I mean above average, but not the best. But what I realized is you can treat bodybuilding as like an active meditation, and just like focusing on the whole ligaments and muscles and like how it feels. Sorry to cut you off there. Go on.
I think there's a lot to merge, to emphasize meditation in a modern sense, and what it like, demystify what meditation is and really take advantage of what it is.
Yes.
But yeah, this guy, this young Indian student at the time, this is years back in India, and I must a year later, he goes through this 10-day silent thing, and he has a mind-blowing experience. He starts really like kind of exiting his previous life. I don't think he quit smoking immediately, but like preceding that year, I don't know if it was immediately after, but he basically sat 10 days every month for a year after his initial.
Smart.
So maintain. Like he literally was taking 30% of his year was in silence, and he reached some kind of plateau of awareness that was trackable through his experience. So not some kind of new agey idea of like all these definitions we pull from Sanskrit, trying to define them in our our English minds, theorizing. But like he had an experience that was confirmed by teachers in meditation, and he reached a plateau of awareness from like a Buddhist lens, and now he's managing a huge retreat center for Vipassana, and him and his brother are just into crypto. So he's just crypto and meditation, like consciousness awareness, and
that's sick.
we're like just a young guy trying to smoke joints in northern India, and now I have this friend who, if or when I visit him, I'll just literally be, guided to sit in silence and have a retreat. But it's like the profoundness of his journey, just literally shedding all these layers and becoming a pretty powerful being of the most minimalistic qualities, like the most, literally just stripping it all away and just saying like, this is the life I live now.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. So it's just a testament to, if you get out of your comfort zone and travel even within the country borders, you will definitely meet some people. It's whatever you intend to be, intend to do, intend to feel, you will feel that eventually, sooner or later. But this reminds me of your amulet guy. I know another guy that you met here in Chiang Mai that you bought your amulet from.
Yeah.
And I want that blurb. I really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm
You don't
not
have it
wearing it.
Oh no. You don't need
Feel
it.
kind of naked without it. Well, yeah, talk about adornments and external items, right?
Yep.
So amulets and tattoos in Thai culture predate Thailand, predate Buddhism. We're talking animism and spiritism. And these amulets, there's quite an array of them and how they're constructed, but these are essentially like video game style. Like, these are magical items made with the intention of augmenting a source of energy, whether it's like a bone skull, a skull bone chip, or a tiger tooth, or an elephant tusk. These items are like carved out of these things and then ritualized through a specific ritual, whether in a graveyard or at a cemetery or at the top of a certain mountain, like spells basically. And so they form these amulets, and these amulets are used by people for a number of things, whether to attract love, to get rich, to protect your physical body from danger, to protect your house from harm, to make your house a comfortable place to live, or a place where money can come easily.
What was that crazy one about the body fluids?
Yeah, so there's all these different, going back into like, it almost gets into necromancy and black magic, where there's different recipes for different amulets,
Right.
and they harness different levels of power within our human desires. So one of these amulets that I read about was like an attraction one, like you'll have this insatiable lust always chasing you. Like, women will almost like not be able to control themselves around you. That's the promise of this spell.
Yikes.
And one of the ingredients is like the skull bone of a woman who had died giving birth. Right? That's that kind of stuff. Or like like an amulet that I read about that was supposed to get you ultra wealthy and protect you, had the ash powder from like 10 rich people that were cremated in a certain ritual. So like these ultra wealthy people that were cremated, the ashes from their bones was collected and compressed into these amulets. So their spirits, essentially these are these spells, or the way these are, how am I saying? This process basically takes the spirit of the individual and bonds them to a physical item, the amulet. It's like a contract for this soul to repay a certain amount of their karmic debt to the amulet holder. And if this is all done within the confines of how this amulet was created and the rules that are around it, there's no ill will. That's how it's supposed to work, right? But a lot of the times people talk about being haunted by amulets and having this ghost trouble them rather than help them, and potentially because they're not using this amulet in a moral way, and maybe they're indulging or using it for ill will or to have power over other people. So I met a young guy from the US. He's from Kansas. Kind of want to look up his. If you want one of these amulets, his Facebook.
Plug it. I remember this one, when the first time you told me about it, I remember this one instance where you said, like the soul who needs to repay some karma, they were evil or whatever. And there's a person who in the world right now is inclined to do evil, and they give this amulet to this potentially evil person, and the spirit who's supposed to, you know, undo the karma, or like pay the karma, is guiding this man to not do evil. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's essentially, it's like, because it's not limited to Buddhism that monks make certain kinds of amulets. They can't cross the line of certain morals, and there's a lot of rules around monks and the magic they can study, the things they can read about, the scriptures that they can go in depth with. It all revolves around metta and these positive attributes of Buddhism. So you can't study necromancy or dark magic or like possession of animals or these different kinds of spells as a monk. But from what I perceive or what I understand, there's a gradient. And so monks know, certain monks that study this kind of stuff, they know a lot about other things, even though they can't directly study it. They know a lot about energetic laws and how these karmic entanglements or contracts work. And yeah, like in another reference, like let's say a gangster dies, and this gangster, he's not necessarily like a complete shithead or like scum of society. He's kind of badass, like Billy the Kid, right? Like maybe a little righteous even, but definitely like did some bad deeds, right? And maybe carried a lot of guilt into their death, and they weren't as good as they wanted to be, right? And let's take that story. And so this gangster died in a certain way, and now this wizard, this monk, or an ajahn, which is like used to be a monk and now is just kind of studying magic a little bit more independently. They take the skull bone of this gangster, compress it into an amulet, they add some other magical powders and chant over it for a whole cycle, whether a month or a year. There's all these different layers of timings. It's kind of really intricate. And at some point you get this amulet that is now augmented with the spirit of this gangster who wants to repay the debts of his shame and guilt of being a bad person in his last life. And whoever comes across this amulet and is in need of power and authority and whatever this amulet is kind of constructed to give, this gangster will provoke that within the spirit, will provoke that within the wearer, but hopefully, like you said, in a positive way that actually improves the life of both of them, or the karmic debt of both of them, and allows them to both grow into more powerful and compassionate beings through this magic. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it's the power comes from the bearer's belief in these things. I think you kind of charge it with the trust or your belief into that amulet, the power of it. You kind of activate it by believing it. Or am I completely off?
I think the belief is a threshold. It's permission.
Mm-hmm.
Something in our consciousness permisses this to occur, and so it is allowed. But I would say that I've had enough experiences of not believing in something and still experiencing something, right? And I think that is even another layer of permission. It's like, well, I don't subscribe to this consciously, but I'll allow it to occur if it does, right? And so, yeah, I would think belief is a huge part of it, but there's something else to it that's when you get into like trying to talk about the Tao, and as soon as we talk about it, it's not it, right? So there's some aspect of that within the experience of mysticism and magic that's like, whether we believe it or not, it is such. I would give it that, at least, just like ones and zeros. Whether I believe math or numbers exist, it is that as such, right? And I would say that's the polarity of mysticism and science in the undefined, that we believe, I guess, because it can give us an experience.
Yeah, so I'll just contradict myself by saying God doesn't need you to believe to exist.
Yeah, and that's but us saying, like, he helps those who help themselves, right? And like there's endless. It's like if we don't say, hey, can I have your help?
Yeah,
we won't get it.
Yeah,
it may not show up. It may, but it does take we have to be a part of it, and belief is a part of that, right?
A friend once told me, say what you want, because there's a chance that you might not get it, and say what you don't want, because there's always a chance that you might get it. So in that sense, it's very important to be vocal. That's why I keep talking about journaling. I won't stop talking about journaling, because I think it's the thing that helps me just watch my life decisions make themselves, almost, because it's kind of like a decision process for the day. I did most of my question writing this morning. I did
Makes me want to write.
Yeah, no, it's great. Speaking of writing, do you have any books that you keep going back to throughout your life?
I'm not a book person. I went through phases of wanting to be more book oriented. I'm not a heavy reader, honestly. There's certain books when I say that, like Autobiography of the Yogi.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
you should definitely read that one.
If you're into mysticism,
even if you're not,
it's readable from many lenses. It's a beautiful journey.
Steve Jobs handed it out at his funeral. Well, he was dead, but he made people hand it out in his funeral.
Yeah. And I think I don't refer to it a lot. It would be fun to read it again. It was kind of an intro to spirituality, but I think with that, with simple lessons, oftentimes there's a lot overlooked. And the Celestine Prophecy was something I read senior in college, and it has just a lot of, like, I would say, the waking up checklist of just realizing there's no coincidences. There's a lot speaking to you. You can see energy. You can read people. There's a lot more available right in front of your eyes than you're seeing, and the different ways in which you become aware of that, and how simple it can be sometimes.
Yep.
So yeah, those two books I think are something that come to mind, but most of, like, I would say a lot of the information, at least a good chunk of information that I've received in the way that I articulate and stuff, I would say has a direct correlation with in the hundreds of hours of mantras I've chanted.
Yes.
So there's something
consistency and repetition.
And yeah, there's something. It's like there's certain mantras. They say, like, roughly, if you repeat a mantra 100,000 times, it's seeded in your subconscious. So it's like a seed, right? What happens when you plant a seed in an environment that can nourish it? It starts to grow. So like when you repeat a mantra, at some point it starts repeating inside of you. And there's really powerful mantras that are essentially like these prayers to awaken your consciousness and be an awake being that can provide this love and intelligence to others, as a divine conduit, and so on and so forth. There's so many prayers, and Sanskrit is a beautiful language to explore. And there's a lot of other languages I think energetically speak to the subconscious. But when I learned about this repetition thing in yoga teacher training, I was like, oh wow, I've definitely said Om Namah Shivaya, over
1,000 times.
10,000 times,
Okay.
whatever. And even the Gayatri mantra, it's a little longer, but it's a more universal prayer for consciousness. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimmahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. And it's a poem about asking creation to liberate the creator to liberate its creation, and for creation to be liberated in a way that is natural, and it shall accept its process in that journey. It's like a poem. It's beautiful. And when you repeat that X amount of times, you literally start to get the information from the universe in the way that your lens or your karma needs to satisfy its equilibrium. And it's really hard to compress into that statement. It's loaded, but I've experienced this over, like, let's say a decade. And I would say that's kind of my book, or that's where the bulk of my information, that's my encyclopedia, that's my library, in terms of how I navigate and where my information has actually come from.
Nice. I like to close off with the time machine. Let's say you go into the time machine, this little vortex, and you get a chance to meet young Zach. What do you say to him?
Okay. Well, with where I'm at now, I would tell him that he is you, or he is Zach, young Zach. You are totally capable of your wildest dreams. And beyond believing that in yourself, you can take little actions each day to get there, right?
Beautiful.
And beware of things that feel good that are easy.
I like that.
And do your best to find pleasure in the long-term goals in your life. And yeah, man, guiding a kid through vices of this world, I would say, like, basically I'm trying to say, like, avoid getting addicted to things, man.
Yeah.
That's, if I have any regrets going on now, like, invest your time in things you know you want in your future without taking yourself too seriously, and don't overdo anything you know you don't want to be doing long term, i.e. bad habits, smoking, drinking. Yeah, there's not enough healthy, compassionate guidance or warnings about that to the youth, like how slippery a slope certain things can be, or how sticky they can be later into your life. And I don't think there's enough mentorship or support for young people to not rely on substance use at some point of their journey.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think it's like the complete opposite. Like, just not only we have a lack of people just, giving a heads up for the youth about the things that are being portrayed in rap music videos or like pop culture, like cars, watches, bags, freaking drugs, smokes and stuff. It's not portrayed. The same people, how they suffer, like these people who endorse these things, we don't see how much they suffer. They kind of hide the pain and the agony that they go through. It's only the flashy bits. It's like social media only shows the aspects of the life people want to show you, and they don't necessarily show the pain and the suffering that comes along with it. So in that sense, it's more important than ever to keep yourself in check and make sure, like you said, just don't get attached to relying on something, slash don't do things that in the long term you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts?
Gratitude. Happy New Year. I really often, I genuinely intend that all beings are where they want to be in their journey, and that you're getting what you need to move forward in a way that feels real. Yeah, I just want everyone to be as free as they can from the suffering that is inevitable.
Hey, freaking man. Thank you so much for doing this, Zach.
Thank you, man. It is a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day.
And this is a great way to start it. And yeah, thanks for sharing your gift, and keep on doing this, man. This is the beginning of something amazing.
I feel so as well. And yeah, curiosity will prevail.
Amen to that.
Thanks, everybody. This was another episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Sawadee Pi Mai.
Sawadee Pi Mai.